Hello and welcome to this webinar brought to you by Virtual India Sourcing Show. I'm Meghla in Singapore and I am joined by Margaret and Kevin. Hi guys, how's it going?
Hello, Meghla. Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you too. It's been a couple of weeks since we did our live webinar.
Yeah.
The last visp. But the reason we're doing this webinar today is because there's been an important announcement from Amazon recently. And basically, Amazon has announced new communication guidelines for buyer-seller messages. And this, of course, affects a lot of people. So we've invited somebody who understands what's going on and the reasons behind this, and what's changed. So we've got somebody from eComEngine, which is basically a tool that offers services related to review. So let me invite our guest on, Suzanne Smith from eComEngine. Hi, Suzanne.
Hey, Meghla. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Thanks a lot for joining us early in the morning, Suzanne. It's 5:30 a.m. where you are. I really appreciate it. And that too at very short notice. So we just discussed this, I think, yesterday, and you agreed to come on. So thanks a lot for that. So Suzanne, first of all, before we go into the topic, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit for our audiences and also tell us briefly what exactly eComEngine does?
Sure, thank you. And happy to be joining to talk about this really hot topic that's very relevant this week. So I'm Suzanne Smith. I am the Director of Customer Success at eComEngine. I've been working in technology companies for over 10 years, about a decade now, and focused here at eComEngine for the last 3 or so. But I love working with Amazon sellers. I love the entrepreneurial spirit of working with Amazon sellers. And I'm really focused on the customer experience, making sure that sellers who are using our tools have what they need to be successful. And what that means for today is really around education and enablement around Amazon policies, right? Like, you can use tools, but you also have to understand the landscape that they exist within. And so that's super important for Amazon sellers, and often so confusing. So it's again a hot topic. And eComEngine, as you mentioned, we've been around since 2007. We were the first provider of automated feedback and review request software. So our flagship tool, Feedback 5, helps sellers automate asking for reviews and feedback. Big critical part of your reputation and your growing business on Amazon. And then we have several other tools for Amazon sellers. We have an FBA inventory management tool called Restock Pro. We have a sourcing tool called Market Scout, and we have an auto repricer, an algorithmic repricer called Smart Price. So, we're in the business of creating tools for Amazon sellers to help you grow and thrive with your businesses.
Awesome. Great. So guys watching, if you have any questions, we'll be asking Suzanne some questions, but if you guys have any questions about this new development, this announcement, feel free to type your questions into the comments and we will read them out to Suzanne. So we have Alan who's joined us. Hi, Alan. How are you?
Good to see you
Alan. Hello, Alan. No golf.
How's the golf, Alan?
Cool. So Suzanne, can you tell us a little bit more about these new communication guidelines that Amazon has announced, and why exactly did they announce these guidelines, and when do they go into effect, and just give us an overview of what the announcement is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And so earlier this week, on the 8th of September, Amazon put out an announcement that they are going to be changing their buyer-seller messaging guidelines effective November 3rd. So they're giving us all some advance notice, which we all appreciate, to make changes to our business operations, both as sellers and as software vendors helping sellers. But these are pretty significant changes. And so what they did, they announced it in the news feed within Seller Central, and they published a PDF with the proposed changes that will come, which lives separately from the current seller communication guidelines on Seller Central. And essentially, these updates were made in response to both third-party seller feedback as well as software developer feedback that the old policies or the current policies are just really confusing, and sellers are desperate for clarity. So, we really appreciate some of the clarity that these new guidelines do bring. And so they're meant to protect buyers, sellers, and Amazon. And they really, these guidelines, they reaffirm that sellers can, in fact, send proactive messages requesting reviews and feedback. So that is a really important takeaway from these guidelines. And so, if you happen to be sending requests for reviews or feedback, this is a great time to just be reviewing what you're sending and making sure that they're sort of in compliance with these updated guidelines to come. And from there, just to unpack it again, it seems like it's almost a little bit hidden on Seller Central. Like if you happen to miss that news update, you might not stumble across this PDF document so easily. And so that's our role, in really making sure we can help educate sellers and prepare them for these changes, both within our software as well as just coaching sellers to make some of their own changes in the proactive communication that they're doing with buyers. And so specifically, they outlined in these new communication guidelines both permitted messages and proactive permitted messages. And so again, I mentioned the ability to send feedback and review requests falls into that proactive permitted messages category that they have in fact blessed, which again, in the past, there's been some confusion or ambiguity around the language that they had in their guidelines. Like, is it really okay to request feedback and reviews proactively, or is Amazon doing this? Are we going to get in trouble for doing this? And the new guidelines, definitively, clarify that it is okay to proactively send feedback and review requests as a permitted proactive message type. They do, go on to specify some components that need to be included or elements around the rules for sending those messages, such as, your messages have to be sent within 30 days of order completion. So, this is a constraint that wasn't there before, but I believe Amazon is, trying to make sure that their messages that sellers are sending are most relevant to buyers, right? Like after that 30-day window, maybe you sell products that, your buyers haven't tried within a 30-day window, but, Amazon is making a blanket statement that 30-day window is sort of required. They include some other details around your message have to have the order number, and they need to be in the buyer's preferred language. And then they go on to also kind of outline what you can't send. So these guidelines initially sort of outline what you can and cannot send. They focus a little bit more around what you cannot do and what you cannot send, but that still provides clarity. And so I think although these guidelines are not perfect, they are an improvement and are going to really help sellers make sure they understand how to stay compliant. And so they also go on to talk about what you're not allowed to do. And a lot of these things are, one, sent by Amazon themselves. And so there was, again, some confusion around what you could or could not send. And Amazon's really trying to kind of standardize and streamline to make sure that buyers aren't getting bombarded with duplicate messages. So, you're not allowed to send order or shipping confirmations. You're not allowed to send just thank you messages, letting sellers, know that you're here to help and you're simply thanking them for their purchase. You're not allowed to send marketing or promotional messages or coupons. And you're, certainly not allowed to try to incentivize or persuade buyers to leave a positive review or feedback. And some of these have been, around for quite some time, but they're just re-emphasizing them, which again, I think sellers ultimately do appreciate. And there's a couple more that you can't do. You can't request product reviews for folks who only had a positive experience, like try to really narrowly focus on just that group. And then they also clarify that you can't send multiple requests. So if you send a feedback or review requests, they don't want you sending follow-up requests. And this one's super important. We've heard that this may be one of the top reasons why sellers were getting restricted, either temporarily or permanently, over the last year and a half, restricted from sending proactive messages when they were just sending way too many messages or repeat messages for the same kind of request. So that's a nuance that I think sellers will appreciate and at least provide some clarity around Amazon's standards and expectations for the kinds of messages that proactive messages that sellers can send. So there's a lot of do's and don'ts. Again, they're not perfect, but I think they do bring more clarity than the current communication guidelines, and will just help sellers stay compliant and remove some of the confusion that caused a lot of sellers to get, again, temporarily or permanently restricted from sending these kinds of proactive messages, and they were left, beating their hand on their head trying to understand why.
So did Amazon always have this categorization of permitted and proactive messages, or is this something new that they have?
This seems to be a new classification, new definition of the kinds of messages. They sort of had different definitions of indirect and direct, but these new categories of just defining both permitted messages and the proactive permitted messages, which again are messages that are not in direct response to a buyer's question, I think is a helpful, a little confusing, but a helpful, extra layer of definition to kind of define how Amazon's thinking about these messages and to pass that through to the seller, enabling them, explicitly to send proactive messages.
So, Suzanne, how can sellers send these messages? And are third-party tools allowed?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, Kevin. So again, these proactive permitted messages that Amazon, has now officially sort of blessed and approved in the new communication guidelines. They've also outlined and scoped how and sort of what channels you could send these proactive permitted messages. And there's a few different ways, right? Like you can do sending emails in Seller Central. If you have a really low volume, like that might be reasonable for you. You can go in and click on a buyer's name on the orders page or the order details page and access Amazon's templated messages, right? So they have provided templated messages for sellers, but it's in a one-off capacity. You're clicking to send messages one at a time. And similarly, they have also blessed within Seller Central, you can use those Amazon's templated messages, or they have a request a review button on the order details page for each order. And you can manually click on that button to send a review or feedback request to your buyer. Now, both of those, again, are a totally manual process and, probably work for sellers with low volume. But if, you have a growing business, very quickly, that's not sustainable. And so Amazon has outlined two other methods, which is sending proactive messages through a third-party application like Feedback 5. But they specify that if you want to use a third-party tool, it needs to be a tool that's been approved by Amazon and available in the Amazon App Store. So the Amazon Marketplace App Store goes through a vetting process to approve vendors such as eComEngine and Feedback5 and others in this space. But I think that, again, provides sellers hopefully some confidence around the kind of tools that they can use. And then lastly, the other way that you could send proactive permitted emails that Amazon specifies is using an API. So that's the Amazon's application programming interface, just an automated way to send messages. And tools like Feedback5 tap into many of those sending mechanisms as well. But Amazon is, again, officially blessing those. And I'm sure there's probably some really tech-savvy sellers that may kind of build their own programming tools to send emails. So it's a great list. It provides clarity and, again, really sort of blesses these various methods to send and allows sellers to have the choice and some Amazon defined options of how to send these proactive permitted messages, which in our world, is very focused on feedback and review requests. Although there's a variety of other, permitted messages that sellers might need to send to help simply help a buyer complete an order or even, reach out if there's an issue with the order, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Suzanne, like Amazon's made a lot of changes in this of what's allowed in your emails, like emojis and GIFs and things. Can you just tell us what the sellers really need to be aware of and so that they can review their messages and make sure that they just don't get restricted or completely banned from messages in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marg. Thank you for asking. And this is, again, an important addition of clarity that Amazon has introduced. But it also they are setting themselves up as, the authority on standardization of a lot of these proactive messages, where in the past, is sort of completely free form, customizable, flexible texts. They have, walked back what flexibility they want to offer because I think they, just want to create a more consistent experience, and they don't want sellers, going totally rogue in these messages. And so in the content of these proactive emails, they've specified a number of things. And again, most of these are not new, but they've introduced a few more rules, both on the email content as well as the email style. It almost feels like they're putting out a bit of a style guide on their expectations for these messages. But the main takeaways are, you can't have external links inside the body of your message unless they're links to Amazon. You can't include attachments except for product instructions or warranty information. You cannot include logos if they have a link to your website. So this one's a little dicey because a lot of sellers, especially older sellers who started, many years ago, may have named their Amazon store with their website, right? Like mycerealbrand.com. Amazon frowns upon that. That's probably not a current practice, but it creates some tension because, essentially your logo is a website. So, even things like that, I think Amazon is starting to crack down on. And again, may encourage you to kind of update your logo or brands if it's a reflection of a website. They go on to specify that you can't include links to opt out of messages or any sensitive content or images. What they want to keep everything PG and really friendly. They mention you can't include tracking pixels or images, email addresses or phone numbers. or even images of the purchased product, because they're really focused on the fact that Amazon's going to include that. So, be very careful with images that you include, and then don't include any images that don't have anything to do with your brand or company. So there's a lot of don'ts in that list. And some of them are intuitive, some of them are not so much. But then they even go on, I think one of the latest additions to sort of their style guide don'ts is the styling of your message. No more emojis, no more GIFs, and then even very specific formatting guidelines. So, they are really coming down to say, hey, we want the look and feel of this message and the content, to be a certain way. And these are our guidelines. They're meant to help you, but it's a lot. They even specify, one of the more funny ones on some of the on some of the seller community threads is they specify you can't have spelling errors or grammar issues.
Is that something
Suzanne,
new that they added?
So sorry, Megla.
Yeah.
Suzanne, what's the safest or the best way to send feedback and ask for review requests these days without getting slammed out of Jeff's door?
Well, and obviously, in this day and age, you have that laundry list you can follow. It is, quite long and relatively clear, effective November 3rd. But what we're also finding is that it's hard to follow all of those rules, right? Like that's a lot. It's a bit cumbersome. Some of it's intuitive, some of it's not. And so, this is a really good time for sellers to consider switching to the Amazon request a review feature in Feedback 5, for example, which sellers are seeing really great results with. And these messages, again, they correlate to the same message being sent from that request a review button in Seller Central. And so these messages come directly from Amazon. Amazon controls the content and the styling, and you sort of never have to worry about whether you're breaking any of Amazon's communication guidelines. And so, as I mentioned, sellers have the option to click that request a review button manually in Seller Central. But for most folks, that's just simply not scalable, not sustainable. And so Feedback 5 really pioneered an automated way to use Amazon's APIs to send those messages on behalf of sellers. And the way it works is within Feedback 5, better than a button click or a Chrome extension, you can use our campaign rules to really cater the way you want to send these requests. So you can send them within 5 to 30 days after an order. And the great thing is because, again, they're Amazon's message, it includes an automatic translation of the message based on your buyer's preferred language in Amazon. So you don't have to worry about that element at all. It's taken care of based on those preferences. And again, sellers are starting to see up to a 41% increase in daily reviews in the first 10 days after activating this new Amazon request a review feature. So it's pretty significant. And some sellers ask us, well, why do I even need to send these messages? Isn't Amazon doing this for me? And they may be, right? The thing is, you don't have any visibility or control around what Amazon is or is not doing. And so most of our sellers, especially those who try it out, and if you get a big boost in your daily reviews, your average daily reviews, it's worth it. And it gives you the ability to kind of fine tune those rules, right? Amazon might have some blanket rules in place on how they send, but your product catalog, SKU by SKU, when it's most appropriate to ask for a review request. whether it's, a consumable that you want to ask for a review request right away, or it's something that a seller has to put together and use for a few weeks before you really want to trigger that review request. You can use Feedback 5 to program those kind of rules, at scale for your entire catalog on a SKU by SKU basis if needed. And again, sellers are getting really great results. We even work with, tons of agencies who have adopted this new feature on behalf of their clients, and they're seeing some great results as well.
Suzanne, what's the difference with now they've got the new ratings compared to reviews? Do people get that option when they get to ask to review, or is that just a different thing altogether?
So that's a great question. And it seems the way Amazon has presented ratings versus reviews, ratings seem to be, the star ratings that are entered for reviews or feedback, whereas the review is the actual comments. It's not totally clear how Amazon is weighting, the difference between the two. But the great thing is when you use that request a review button or, third-party tools to help you automate this sending mechanism, is that when the buyer receives that email, it has a request for a product review and seller feedback included in the email, and it's dynamic. So if the recipient, the buyer, clicks a star rating from your email, it is submitted at that particular moment. So it takes them to Amazon, but at that moment in time, you see that the rating's already submitted, and it prompts, the buyer to leave comments, the actual review. But it is a nice way to kind of just build that up. And as a shopper, I appreciate seeing both of those ratings and reviews. I think each person individually probably uses their own threshold of like, well, I only want to look at products who are, 4 stars and above, or 4.5 stars. It builds, just that confidence level in shoppers. And then if a product has met that rating threshold personally, then I go in to deeply read the reviews. But I think both are still important. And I think, lots of folks are asking those same kinds of questions and looking for more clarity around what the weighting difference is between the two.
Yeah, because you seem to get a lot more ratings these days. I think people are almost lazy and don't follow up with the review. It just seems to be, if you look at the amount of reviews you get compared to the amount of ratings, or we do, I presume everyone's the same.
Well, and I think it might be, a result of the way that they've made it so much easier to leave a rating. I don't know 100%, but probably in the past, if they weren't allowing end users to, submit their ratings from the email directly, like if it just took you into Amazon and then you had to press your star rating and then you had to click submit, that's like a multi-step process where now, they're capturing the rating directly from the emails. So I would certainly expect ratings to go way up. But as you mentioned, but the reviews are really important. And obviously sellers really want to get those positive reviews within their product catalogs for other buyers to read when shopping.
One of the other things, Suzanne, was I remember a long time ago when we first started sending off emails, we could do PDFs and all kinds of workbooks, instructions, all kinds of things. And it was, I remember sort of staying up late at night trying to work out how we could attach all these things to an email to try and sort of, get people to give us a review. How's that sort of stuff going to work now?
So, they have said within the guidelines that, attachments, the only permitted attachments are product instructions, warranty information, or invoices. So that, really limits the kinds of things that you could send. Obviously, there's still other options around packaging, inserts, or other information to try to encourage reviews. But clearly Amazon is, trying to standardize more, their expectations for how sellers should do this.
Right.
So no recipe booklets.
No recipe booklets.
But I think those kinds of things can be included, in the inserts, or if you have an instruction booklet, I think that makes sense. And if you look at any other products that you buy, from any other brands, like an appliance or a microwave or any other appliance, they do have recipes in the instruction booklet, or maybe a separate recipe booklet in the box. I think that's something that people could consider instead.
Yep.
So let's see, we have a couple of questions here. Okay, so Anna's asking, wondering where to get a list of the TOS. So there's a really nice blog post that eComEngine has done, and I've shared this in the Facebook group, the India Sourcing Facebook group, and someone from eComEngine has in fact posted a link to that blog over here. I'm not sure which post this is on. It's probably on the Asian Seller Facebook post, because we're streaming on a few different posts. So I think it's on the Asian Seller post. And so go check that out, Anna. But otherwise, Suzanne, where can people get the entire list?
So the entire list is available on Seller Central. And let's see, we can put the link directly.
Yeah, we can probably do that after the show is done. We can probably post a link.
Yeah, we'll post a link to.
We'll post a link. I think there's also a PDF.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just for all the folks out there, Suzanne's near Washington. She's got a special computer to give us special links. Sorry, Suzanne, I couldn't let that one go right.
Okay, so someone's saying thank you for doing a show UK morning time. Yeah, thank you. Okay, here. So this is the link. This is the blog post. And I think it's Colleen who's probably watching with us. So she's probably posted the link here. But yeah, this is the post that I saw, and it was very comprehensive, and all of the guidelines and the do's and don'ts are outlined very clearly. And so definitely go and read this blog post. Okay, we've got a question from Alan. Is there a place where we could download Amazon's own templates, which we could replicate and place on our own automation platform?
That's a really good question. So within Seller Central, if you go to an individual order and click into the custom templates or the standard templates, you can sort of see what they make available. But because we don't use, this one-off approach often, I'm not sure if it includes like all of the elements. I would encourage you, what we typically do is try to operate, like a buyer and actually, be the recipient of many of these various emails so that we can see the full look and feel. I think we also have on our blog, when we talk about request a review, which again is becoming increasingly sort of the preferred option. Again, if you want to just not have to worry about any of the rules, I know on our blog have a copy of what that email looks like. Let's see.
And yeah,
we'll put that in.
And is it updated with the new guidelines?
Well, so the request a review email actually doesn't apply really to these guidelines, right? Like it is by definition, it's Amazon's email, Amazon's content,
okay.
And completely compliant. The rest of the guidelines, as you saw, the list, there's 10, 20, 30 things to consider. So Amazon's still saying sending flexible, customized messages is okay, but you have to follow, these 30 different rules if you want to send a custom or flexible message. And so, eComEngine's going to be working to make sure that all of our customers who use any custom templates have options that are totally compliant. But there's going to be some judgment and still, flexibility and personalization around what individual sellers want to do.
Right.
Suzanne,
go ahead, Mark.
We usually, if someone sort of writes back and says like the product's not as described or was, had an issue with it, I usually sort of write and say like that we want to ensure our customers have a great experience, and would you mind telling me, what the problem was, etc. Is that still an acceptable thing to do or not?
Absolutely. So responding to product reviews is still, a best practice. I think the rules basically say you can't ask that person to remove the product review. And that has been the case, for some time. But I would highly encourage everyone to continue responding to all reviews, positive or negative, because again, it sets that, sort of public record for other shoppers to see, see a bit of your personality, see your customer service approach. And even if someone has had a bad product review, but you respond really well, really effectively, like that might turn, sort of that negative product review into a positive experience for someone shopping, especially if buyers recognize that the problem was out of your control, right? Yeah. So if it's, arrived broken or something, 1 out of 200, 1 out of 1,000, arrived broken, well, you can address that. And I don't think that would take someone away from ordering, your product. So absolutely, that's a best practice.
There's so many people we know in the Amazon world that they complain that I've got a fantastic product and it's really unfair because someone give me a 1-star or a 2-star, and it really is out of the they can't do anything about it. And we always say to people, look, turn a negative into a positive. Just go just exactly what you just said, and that's how we handle it each time. And don't we, Mark? We just
we try, you try and give it a positive.
Turn that negative into a positive. And I think, like you said, Suzanne, people see you as someone is having a go, and not just going to ignore those comments or not afraid to sort of go against those comments. So we go in there all the time, and we love them, don't we, Mike? It's a challenge.
Some of them.
Well, and if you continue, we also tell people, continue asking for reviews and requests, because also, 1 negative review out of 10, looks a lot worse than 1 out of 100 or 5 out of 100. So keep building up that muscle, and keep the requests going. Even established sellers who have tons of reviews and requests, buyers want to see fresh, current, recent reviews. Even if you have thousands that are from a few years ago, you look stale. So it's really an important part Amazon has, sort of embedded into the shopper's DNA to look for, recent reviews and interpret, your opinion of the seller's reputation and, their customer service and customer experience from a lot of the comments.
Yeah, Suzanne, do you also think though that a lot of if you looked at a product and it had 200 5-star reviews, it's not real, is it? You want to look. As a shopper, you'd rather look at that and it's got a mix of reviews, or across the board, not just 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star, because you're going to get all sorts. If you've been on the platform that long, and you've got 200 reviews, to have 200 mixed reviews to me is far better than having, 5-star reviews. And so often I see in the comments in different Facebook groups, people, their whole life is crushed when they get a 4-star review. And I mean, I've seen people's comments and they say, I've got, so many 5-star reviews, and this one person has given me a 2-star review. It's crushed my world, but anyway, get over it.
It's about perspective, right? And
Yeah,
authenticity.
absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm with you. I would rather see
Yeah.
someone who's a little bit more of a mixed bag with
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
authentic reviews than somebody who just has, 200 5-star reviews that say the product is good. you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my students, her first review was a 1-star, but it said, I love the product. My grandson, I gave it to him as a gift, and he's so happy with it. But they gave her 1-star, so she was obviously elderly and didn't understand 1 and 5. Like, it was so frustrating. She's going, what can I do about this? How can I turn this around? I said, you can't. You can't go and say, are you an idiot? And you've given me a 1-star and you meant to give me a 5. Like, it goes the other way. But I mean, it's quite funny when it was like a boss. Oh, she was so upset because that was their first review that they got.
Okay, Alan. I take it to heart when I get a 1 or 2-star review. However, on several occasions, managed to change them from 1 or 2 to 4 or 5 thanks to timely customer service.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very encouraging to know. So, so your customers have actually changed the reviews because, that's very difficult to go back to them and say, hey, can you change the review, right?
You didn't ask them, Alan, did you?
We've been in that position ourselves, Mark, haven't we? And we've gone, what are we going to say? And Amazon going to, pick up on the words that we use in the email. And so we're always tentative and very sort of, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? So, Alan, that's amazing. You're doing really, really well, mate.
So, Suzanne, why do you think Amazon has announced these changes now, right before Q4? Do you think it might be because they're expecting a lot of FBM orders and, maybe for FBM orders, you might have to send more messages to customers and there may be issues. I mean, do you think it's because of that or it's just a coincidence that it's right before Q4? And especially a Q4 that's going to be historic, I guess.
I mean, that's a really good point. Honestly, I don't know. I think that seems to be good, backward reinforcement for why they would make this change. But I can also imagine, that things like this on the Amazon side take a really long time to actually push out. So, who knows? Maybe they've been working on this for months, and it's just more of coincidental timing. We have seen, as you probably have too, Amazon's changed their tune on these temporary restrictions for proactive sellers. Their enforcement of those has increased, and the rules, a year ago, if you got temporarily restricted from sending proactive messages, it might be for a week or 10 days. They kind of ramped that up to a month. And now we're even seeing permanent bans from proactive messages, which is super unfortunate and very troublesome for sellers. And so I think as they've ramped up that enforcement, we've certainly been pushing for tons more clarity for sellers on what they're doing wrong, right? Like it's such a terrible situation to be permanently restricted and not be able to get a clear, specific answer on what happened. And so, I know we've been pushing on that for a while, and I know lots of sellers, who've been in that boat. It's just really frustrating because you might be able to clearly identify, one thing that you're doing wrong based on, these guidelines and even what they have in place. But even if you fix that and you still get restricted, it's a bit of a black box. So I hope that Amazon had been working on this for a really long time, but I absolutely agree with more FBM orders. I'm sure there'll be more proactive communication needed to make sure that orders are delivered and the whole process is successful. So hopefully this will enable sellers doing more FBM to manage those communications effectively. Hopefully it won't be too cumbersome with all of the rules, but I think a lot of those communications end up having to be one-off anyway, right? Like if you have a specific problem with an FBM order, like you're reaching out to that individual customer, so you probably have to do it in Seller Central anyway. And Amazon's going to have a lot of their preset stuff in there for you to use, as well as, already be taking advantage of a lot of, the formatting and other rules for you. But those are one-off messages, right? Like anything that you need to do at scale, you're certainly not going to do one click at a time.
Right. Absolutely. So Alan says, if I come on, no one will get a word that way. Yes, so we know that. Kamal Sandhu says hi. Awesome.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, Mark, Kevin, is there anything else that you guys want to add before we wrap up here?
Well, we could probably talk about this subject all night long. It's just like this subject has gone on forever and a day, hasn't it? And it's changed so much. And since we started with Amazon, it's just keeps evolving all the time. And of course, we would love to be able to communicate with our customers. Well, when I say, but they're not our customers, are they?
They're not your customers.
Yeah, they're not our customers.
So, but even sometimes it's a little bit sort of, how can I say, old-fashioned, sort of archaic, or whatever the word might be, when people or customers reach out to us with a problem. It seems to be so hard to really help them because Amazon are in the way. Does that make sense? And myself and Mark, we get frustrated sometimes because we see there's a little issue and we know we can sort of handle it in a lot of ways, but because we have to watch our P's and Q's, it's like being at grandma's on a Sunday afternoon when you feel like swearing. You've got to watch, the language. And when you first started off, Suzanne, you spoke like a lawyer. and sometimes, like those words and the way the articulation of the English language and the way that Amazon want us people to relay to, what they say, a lot of ordinary people find that quite hard to comprehend. Not that there's a problem, but to talk like that in that language sometimes is very difficult for people to pick up on it. Do you agree?
For sure. There's a disconnect between Amazon's policy language and most people's, everyday human-centric approach to just customer service, right? And that's why, we've tried to, publish our blog and unpack a lot of what they're doing. At times you can't get away from using their language because it's quite explicit, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it leaves some room for interpretation, but Amazon claims they want to be, the company that's most customer centric and provide the best customer experience, to buyers. Obviously, sellers, fit into that ecosystem in a very important way, but it doesn't always align perfectly around what their priority is. But I hope, in the end, I think there'll be some pain around adopting these new guidelines. And my hope is that people will lean into other automated and scalable requests for things like reviews and feedback. Because nobody wants to spend time managing a 30-point punch list of rules. But to your point, even when you're managing just one-off communications with sellers, this list gives you maybe some heartburn or anxiety around your spelling, your grammar, your formatting. And I'm sure that Amazon will get lots of feedback around that too.
Right. So Suzanne, do you also want to tell us about eComEngine? Of course, you have Feedback 5, which is mostly for reviews, but what are some of the other tools that you guys offer?
Sure. So, feedback, reviews, and also review management. So making sure that you're closing the loop with sellers to respond to all reviews, which we already talked about. There's an add-on component of Feedback 5 called Product Review Management that allows you to kind of do that and manage that at scale, which is really important to sellers' businesses. And then our other tools, we have an FBA inventory management tool, Restock Pro, that helps you forecast and order, the right quantity of items based on your margins and your sales, et cetera. So that's pretty powerful and has a really large customer base. Our sourcing tool to help you identify new products, to add to your catalog, Market Scout, is also quite popular. And then our newest tool is a repricer, which again, we know so many sellers, we're kind of incorporating that into their tool set to make sure that you're winning the buy box and maximizing your profits, again, based on your profit margins for your catalog. So we, have a variety of tools for Amazon sellers. And again, I work within the customer success team as the director, and we, really pride ourselves on really excellent support. So you'll get lots of hand-holding and, answers to any of your one-off questions, as well as a lot of proactive coaching and support for any of your strategic questions or, business scenarios where you're like, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I accomplish that with eComEngine? These are my pain points as a seller. What can you do? So we've got a great team, and lots of sellers, I think, end up choosing eComEngine, both for our tools, but also for our support.
Awesome. Great. And then here's an email address in case anyone wants to reach out to eComEngine. So support@ecomengine.com. And of course, go and read the blog post that they've done on the new announcements. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And we'll hope to see you around.
Me. Yes, indeed. Thanks for having me. And great to meet you all.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good information. Thanks.
Lovely to meet you. Great information.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.